Yoga retreats, mindfulness retreats, wellness retreats. What are they? How do I go on them? Should I be going on them? Enjoy my next conversation with my awesome friend, Nina Butler from InRetreat. We explore her whole transition from running a tech company called YogiComm to her new company that is all about yoga retreats in the wellness industry, and find out how she's transitioned from one way of being and operating to another. So I look forward to seeing you in our conversation shortly. Namaste and welcome everyone. It is me, Nina Sachs from Yoga Awakening Africa, and I am joined by another Nina. It is so good to see you, Nina. We met many, many years ago when you had just started up YogiComm, which was like a platform for yoga teachers to teach kind of like online classes, or for the general public to find yoga teachers and then request recordings, online yoga class recordings. It was like kind of like you definitely were an innovator in that phase, in that stage. I don't think anyone was really doing that really. So that's kind of like how we met. And then life happened and things shifted and changed, and you've moved from kind of like YogiComm, you've been in the retreat world, and now running also your own startup again. So Nina, welcome. Do you want to give
Thank you.
everyone a quick update on who you are and what you've been up to?
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me here. Always nice to chat to another Nina. I remember when you joined YogiComm and I was setting up the emails. Everybody got a YogiComm and @YogiComm email, and being both Ninas, it was I then used your whole name. But anyway, in the back end of the organizing those emails and the user admins, it was always a point of great confusion to me. And actually, I think I still have Nina Sachs @YogiComm like attached to one of my YogiComm accounts. Anyway, so yes, we met when I started YogiComm. I think it was 2016. I first spoke to you, one of the first people that I engaged and that agreed to join. And yeah, it's funny when you think about that now, post-COVID, you're like, oh, online yoga classes, wow, how innovative, like whoop-de-woo. But at that
Then,
time,
yeah.
yeah, there was no Zoom. And literally the only kind of video platform was Skype, which then was there was no Skype for Business. It was all just about, calling your mates, and it was a one-to-one call. There was no kind of professional platform for you to kind of run a business through video sharing, and particularly not in the yoga sphere. So yes, I really wanted that to happen, mostly for myself. And then I was like, hold on, other people might also want this. But anyway,
I remember it was so challenging. I remember I had a client, Hannah, and she would like, wanted a couple of videos, and I was like, okay, I had my, I think it was like an old Dell laptop or whatever it was, and there I am, because I was busy in Tanzania when that request had come through, and I was trying to record this, and then like send these big files, and then using, I can't remember if it was like Handbrake or whatever it was called, to like
yes,
reduce the
compressed
file size.
size.
And like we
Oh,
think about like that was like 2016 and we're now in 2024. That's not that many years. And like the stress and the anguish that we all went through back then, and how
yeah.
easy it is now is
Oh my gosh. And how many businesses now are run purely on video sharing and whatever skill or service, the entire business now. And it's all enabled by the technology that we're using right now. Without it, none of those businesses exist.
so have you
And
always been like an innovator? Like, I don't know, I'm like a kind of like the first in the market. Like, do you, yeah.
you know, I don't see myself as that. I guess, but YogiCom I started not because I was kind of looking for the innovative, cool idea, but more I was solving a problem that I had. which was, I had been living in Durban and finishing my research PhD in history and philosophy, is historiography, the intersection between the two. And I had finished that and didn't want to like live in the city anymore. I had dreams of being in a conservancy and in nature. But I had built a nice network of clients in Durban. And I sort of thought, well, I love teaching yoga. I don't want to give up teaching yoga. And how do I make this happen? And then I just started researching how I could keep teaching my clients, and particularly the private clients that I had, but for private lessons, how do I keep that going? And I searched and I searched, and there was either literally like very unprofessional Skype calls, or very, very expensive, like corporate, kind of like video conferencing like level software. Cisco is one of the companies, you know, with like corporate enterprise deals of hundreds of dollars a subscription a month, you know. And as a South African and a yoga teacher and a recently finished student, there's absolutely no way that was, you know, entry market option. And so I was really building something for myself and my own, and answering this need I had. And that, you know, therefore I guess was innovative. But you hear these words, yeah, the disruptors and that sort of thing, and I don't see myself as that. And
More
I
like
think,
kind of like seeing that there's a problem, you want to solve the problem with a solution,
yes,
and
and I think,
skills.
yeah, and everything I've done has been very like heart led. So I also like the business I have now, InRetreat, which is retreats, multi sort of discipline and multi-focus retreats around the world, and that is born out of me just asking myself, what are my passions and what service can I give to the world? Like, what's a useful thing to do? And the answer to that was like passions were travel and like wonder, and adventure. And then like service, well, I don't take myself seriously enough to be an academic. Like, I've been doing this thing for a while, and it doesn't feel authentic, and I really don't take myself seriously enough to be this, you know, ivory tower academic. But one thing I do is I turn up and I teach yoga classes, and people love it, and they feel better when it's done, and they leave with an open heart and an open mind. And so it's small, but that's a positive impact, and that's something meaningful, and people are willing to pay for that. So let me work with that and marry it with the passion of the wonder and adventure and travel. And that's literally the business that I have now, is the exact combination of those two things. So everything, I guess, that I've done is starts from like an immediate need, heartfelt. And I think that in general in business, if your starting point is authentic and meaningful, and there's a bit of luck, like the market is open and ready for it, then it can, that is a good combination for things to be successful, I think. People feel authenticity. Yeah.
They can. They definitely can. They really, really can. And I love your journey. And I suppose kind of like where I'm intrigued with is, because I've also kind of like hopped around a little.
Yeah.
When you decided to end YogiComm, how was that for you? Was that quite a difficult space that you went through, or was it not?
Yeah, no, it definitely. So YogiComm didn't end in a very like, you know, like I would say structured way. I sold the business concept and there was this handover, or I guess what I dealt with was more disappointment in myself. And it petered out because I just didn't have capacity to give it the time that it needed. And that's because I started, so I built the business and it started growing. We moved from South Africa to Amsterdam in that time that the business was growing into 2017, mid 2017, end of 2017. And by then I think there were about 48 yoga instructors on the platform in quite a few different languages. And I was at a stage where the business was definitely running, like things were happening, but reached a stage where it was kind of like, right, now either I get investment, like, and this becomes like a serious thing, and I build, like try and build a team, or I put my money into it, or like, well, I already had done that, but in a big kind of sort of capital investment way to employ some other people and so on. And like, this needs to become like a tech business, because at the heart, the operations of it, that's what it is.
Mm.
And sort of encountering that, so it's either like I get to that, like if it's than where it is now, then that's what needs to happen. And when I was facing that, I sort of realized that I have no interest in running a tech company. And I also, at the same time, on a very practical level, was being invited or asked to do consulting work, freelance work for other companies in the wellness and yoga and travel space, in brand strategy and communications, because I guess people had seen what YogiComm was doing on that level, and how it was communicating, and sort of saying, well, who's behind that? I want that too. Who did your, copywriting, whatever. And then naturally, I was then starting to do those freelance gigs, and they paid so much better than running the business. And living in Amsterdam and all of that, it was just a natural thing to follow the freelance and a contract work. And I guess the nail in the coffin was when I got a kind of a 6 or 8 month contract with Book Yoga Retreats, which is owned by Tripreneur, which is an Amsterdam-based start, now scale up, like the booking.com of travel experience is the way to describe it. And they were doing a rebrand and had a whole, like sort of 8 month contract with them in various copywriting and UX capacities. And that was just really the nail in the coffin, because I couldn't do that and grow YogiComm. And so I didn't make it, it would kind of like started petering out and getting smaller and less frequent communication and less frequent marketing. And then I did like call it, but I'd already kind of withered by the time I did. And I dealt with, yes, of course, disappointment and the what ifs, which then resurfaced when COVID happened, of course, because actually a couple of people reached out to me saying, oh, you're the YogiComm person. Like, now I need YogiComm, like, where's YogiComm? And I was like, it's dead, it's gone. But anyway, by then we had Zoom, so, and all the other platforms that just mushroomed over that time, so it was fine. But yes, I guess there is that, like, what if I'd hung out just long enough for COVID to come around. But again, it was a technical business, a tech business at the end of the day, the functionality of it, and that's not my skill or my passion.
It's so funny hearing you say that, because it's like both of us, I went into creating like Yoga Awakening Africa, the magazine. That was like in 2008, because I wanted to bring the yoga community together. I wanted everyone to have conversations. I wanted like the Yayengis to stop complaining about the Ashtangis, to stop complaining about the Kundalinis, to stop, like, I just wanted us all to be like a happy family and share like our, all our knowledge. And I thought, well, putting it together in a magazine made sense. Only to realize that, like, 2019, 2009, kind of like the whole publishing industry completely collapsed. Like, it was not the best time to go into it. And so I kind of like pushed through a little. And then in 2010, just realized, like, actually pulling out of this, like, I'm not a publisher. I'm really not like good at sales. Like you, I was doing everything, and either I had to put in big investment to get a team behind it and make it work, or again, understand. And I just hear like what you're saying, like my passion was those things, the communication, the building. It wasn't running a publishing company, but it took me many, many years of, and I don't know if I have fully processed it yet either, to be honest, but to be okay with like having failed at that. Not that it was a massive failure in life, but it was one of those things that I had really like envisioned. It was going to go big, and we were going to have like Yoga Awakening Australia and Yoga Awakening Europe, and like it was going to be like massive, and we were like, oh, no, that did not happen. But what I've kind of like resurrected in the last couple of years is, again, with these conversations, is like doing what is at the heart of it. And that sounds like exactly where you are with your travel, with your yoga, and like connecting people and being supportive and helpful to them. So so that was my whole long story, but I just thought like I totally like mirror you with like how you feel, because there was a lot of disappointment and what ifs. Um
Absolutely. I think
but
business is like that. I think if you speak to anybody who has run their own business, failure is failure, big, horrible, heavy word, but it is part of it. And it's a wonderful gift. It teaches a lot of lessons, and you can only see it as a closing of doors that open others. And I'm sure if you look back, will see that in your story. I certainly see it in mine, and it's never a waste, that's for sure.
exactly. No, for sure. And exactly. If you think like, if I think back, if I had this publishing thing, I would have had to be stuck in Cape Town or wherever it was going to be printed, and I'd have to be there, at least 3 or 4 times a year to make sure it's happening. Whereas when I managed to let it go, I was able to travel again, and travel is something I've loved. And now
Sure.
being able to, explore Ayurvedic coaching and going down that route. And like you say, it just opens up more doors at the end of the day. And it's
Yeah.
not kind of like, sitting on your couch crying for the next 10 years that something didn't work, but actually just to see the opportunities that arose,
Right.
or that arise. So kind of like my question is like, how do you find you've evolved over the years with your yoga, your practices, delving into travel and retreats? Like, how's the evolution been?
So that's a really big question, but I would say the first thing that came to mind when you were asking that is to answer it in terms of my teaching, like the actual me, Nina, is a yoga teacher. Um, and I would say that when I started teaching on retreats, and I used to work for an American retreat biz company, American-based retreat company, I had a lot of nerves and a lot of self-doubt. So I'm very good at like appearing very, welcome and comfortable and relaxed, but inside like dying. And and I was
I think
super
there are so many people who can probably relate to me right now. I'm like, yep, in there.
um, and I was found it absolutely exhausting because of that anxious energy. Um, and I found every retreat to be like terrifying, but then also what the biggest thing that you get out of it is the amazing people that you meet at very interesting times in their life. And everyone that you come into contact with, that is a gift in itself, because you learn so much from them. And you learn so much from the context, the interaction between them and the context in which you travel, and seeing how people and less. But I did start out, ultimately a hyper planner, like every single detail predetermined, from playlists to that speech to that to everything super over planned. And it's so funny actually, because I am like so many yoga teachers. It's like the funniest part of the industry is that most yoga teachers are like the most extreme A types. Like, and the whole industry is like, incense and flowing robes and mandalas, but then actually, like, most people who are operating in the space are like serious A type, overachiever type personalities. But and so I planned everything and found it incredibly challenging, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform physically. So I had the idea that if I was like, if it was like this luxury retreat at this beautiful location and guests from all these different parts of the world, and now I need to come and like perform physically, and my classes need to be really like physically and technically challenging and unique. And I felt a lot of pressure in that way, and I put a lot of focus into that people should come and be like wowed by the yoga that they're doing and the different postures and these different sequences and adding this. And I put a lot of effort into that, and I think some people obviously did really enjoy that. But over the years, I've realized more and more and more and more and more that people don't remember or care really about the details of the sequences, or you know, the aroma that's released in combination with that song and all of that. Ultimately, people remember how you make them feel, and that's what stays with them. And sometimes those moments that you plan to little surprises and details and combination of aroma and song lead to a feeling that stays with them, and that's beautiful. But not always. Sometimes the feeling that you evoke is because it was not planned, or is because you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and spontaneous. And that's been a big learning. And I think anybody who's a yoga teacher will resonate that the more you teach and the more experienced you are in teaching, what that really means is the more able you are to go off page and to have an idea and an aim, but you trust yourself and you deliver without all of that hyper planning. There's almost like a heaviness to that type of planning that I use to every posture, song, every word, you know, and there's almost a heaviness to that. It's very kind of confined. And although it can come off very well, there is a feeling of that kind of almost a constriction. And as I've grown, it is a much more free and light process, and I'm able to respond more to people, you know, and incorporate different needs in a more accurate and authentic way. And I think now, you know, when I lead now a retreat, the actual teaching of classes is like, that's like the easy thing. Like, I don't even worry about that. And all the stuff now that drains me are the logistics of that I'm running the business that's behind the retreat. And that's what like drains me. And that's what I have to kind of keep separate from the retreat experience and from how I interact with guests.
It's such a key aspect that you bring up, and there's a lot in there that I wanted to unpack. One of them was like, for new yoga teachers who are coming into the business, it's like, you know, sometimes you do need the structure, and you do need to, you know, you can't just like wing it. You know, if you've been teaching for 20 years, it's a different story. You've done the hard grafting, you've done the lesson planning, you've made all your mistakes, you know, and you've learned over the years. So like, I think that's one really helpful thing that you brought up, is like, kind of like, it was a process, it was an evolution. You grew to being in that space. It didn't just happen overnight. And I think that is really helpful to hear. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is this idea of like, as a yoga teacher, like running yoga retreat sounds gorgeous because you think of the beautiful venue, and then you get to do yoga all weekend long or all week long, and you're going to eat all these healthy, beautiful meals. But you forget about the admin that goes behind putting a retreat together, with regards to doing all the marketing, doing all the sales, following up, booking the venue, booking the catering. And there's always a little hitch or something here or there that snags, and then a person needs to cancel, and then this person can't come, and there's a lot of admin and emails back and forth and here and there. And not many of us have like a nice automated system where a person just books in, they're in, credit card details are done, boom, and it's sorted. Like, there is a lot of interaction. I think that's a really valid point that you're bringing up with regards to, you know, you love the teaching part of it, but it's the admin side that does take up a lot of time, and you can't get away from one or the other unless you're going to be all the admin for us for our yoga retreats.
I mean, maybe I start. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, now in retreat there are more. I'm building I guess, a team of instructors, and yeah, so if it's an in retreat instructor who's taking, who's leading a trip in retreat, business does all of the admin for them, and that is an ideal role because then you do just turn up and teach. And in fact, that's kind of what I did when I worked for the Californian-based retreat company. And there's something or deals with the money between guests.
Mm.
And I always thought that was like a little bit like, at first when she said that to me, I was kind of like, that's a bit like awkward, like what's wrong with that, like. And over the years and running trips myself and having to do accounting and chase people for balance payments and deal with people who say like, can I have a discount? I've run out of money, and like all the kind of stuff that comes up, right? Like, and it's really endless. I do get that. I do understand that, and I think she zeroed in on the money aspect. But I guess that's just one point of a bigger point, which is that retreats are also a business, and there is a massive administrative burden if you're going to do it professionally. I think the industry is at a very interesting stage because it's growing hugely, and there are so many more people going on retreats right now than ever before. And it is again a post-COVID boom because people are like, I want to travel, but it must be meaningful. I don't want to just sit at the swimming pool with a cocktail and feel bloated and fat. Like, I want to learn something and feel good in my body and myself and like grow on a holiday. I don't just want a boring conventional, like not boring, but like conventional overindulgent holiday. I want something that makes me feel good. And so so many more people in that space post-COVID, and it's growing so much. But the industry is still actually relatively young in the travel world. People are quite new and quite fresh. And in that stage, there are two, in this like early expansion, there are two kind of sides to the business. The one are like companies that are running a lot of trips, a lot of retreats, and like giving an experience that is just ticks the boxes of what a retreat is. Like, oh, there was a yoga teacher every day, it was healthy food, I got a mantra in the morning under my door, whatever, like just like ticking the boxes, and like profiting on people being like, oh, I want a retreat, I've never been on a yoga retreat, or me and my bestie are going on a retreat, whatever. So profiting off that desire and that demand. And then so like a kind of a corporatization, for want of a better description. And then there is a side of the business also, which is yoga teachers who are like, I've got a community, I'm a teacher, people want to go on retreat with me. There's like, my clients are saying, my students are saying, I want to go on retreat, let's go there. And I like Greece, and okay, we're going to go, and now I'm going to plan it. And I think that's wonderful, and everyone starts somewhere. But that means that in the industry, there's also people who are running what is ultimately a business venture with no like business experience. And those are two kind of very diverse sides of the business, like a hyper corporatization, just like making money, and other side of it is highly authentic, and giving like a wonderful personalized experience, but also lacking in that kind of business structure and know-how. And I deal with a lot of venues that are retreat venues, but also just lodges and hotels that have a retreat vibe. And I deal with them all the time, and I like have quite a lot of different venues I deal with, and a lot of them say to me that they want retreat business. It's good for them, fills up the hotel or whatever, or the lodge, or in the shoulder seasons, and it's a group booking. I mean, it's fabulous. They want the business, but there's always a bit of trepidation from their side because there's quite a high failure rate in terms of yoga teachers being like, oh, I'm going to bring 14 people, and then wasn't 14 people, but I'm a yoga teacher, so I don't have money to cover the loss. And the hotel is like, yes, but we kept the rooms for you for 6 months. And, there's like a bit of and so there's that kind of trepidation from lodges around the industry because of that kind of, very authentic but fledgling business venture that's happening. Yeah.
And so again, so with your new business now, so how does that operate? Because I think it's again sounds like you are bridging the gap there a little.
Yes, I mean, so it started with me start running a couple of retreats. I was the teacher, you know, like doing everything, and the brand was Nina, my name, straightforward, um, and yeah, and organizing the doing all of the planning and traveling on the retreats. And I guess I was learning from the mistakes of the company that I worked for. In doing that, and now I guess the business is expanding in the sense that it's an umbrella brand, and there are other instructors, not just me, still doing most of the trips, but other instructors taking retreats under the brand. And there's areas of specialization, so the concept, the experience that is not going on a retreat but in a retreat, that they are immersive journeys, fully immersive. And you know, and there's pillars of that, which is in nature, in the flow, inspired, and yeah, and in like in depth. So using that word in and expanding that, there are areas of like in leadership, in safari, in mountain, in beach. So there are retreats that are hiking trips with yoga every day. There are retreats that you travel with a professional artist and have you know, creative classes, whether it's in calligraphy or painting every day, and along with your yoga. There are retreats that are in thought, so they're around creative writing and destination. So exceptional lodges that are handpicked. All of the places I travel to before, there's not a trip that I'll ever be like, oh, that looks nice, great price, we'll send people there. You know, like I go there and handpick them, and I negotiate hard with the venue to get like the best possible thing for the retreat, and all these beautiful details. And the sort of catchline of the brand is retreats that inspire wonder. Because what I feel the most amazing thing about travel is that your everyday things, like drinking a cup of coffee, become wondrous. They become like you're experiencing them for the first time. And in order to feel that wonder and that awe, which is like a chemical rush in your body, it's a very high emotion. And in order to feel that, you don't feel that in your everyday when you're like sitting in the traffic, or like, you know, have meeting with your boss or something like that. To feel that, you have to be in your body, like in your body, a feeling of alignment and comfort in your body. You have to be connected to the space around you, and you have to have the right kind of frequency of mind in order to appreciate and see the wondrous things and all the details around you. And so this feeling of awe and wonder, I think, is like the cherry on top of travel. Like a good trip, like every day you're like flooded with this emotion of awe and wonder, which is also deeply healing in the body, you know, just as an emotional, on a vibrational level. And so all of the trips have these moments woven into them where people are invited to feel wonder.
Amazing. I love it. And kind of like, again, two things pop out when you kind of like speaking about all of that. The one thing is, I'm out in Mozambique, Southern Africa. You're up in Norway, right? So now, is your business mainly based up in Europe? Is there anything happening in Africa? Is there anything
Yes,
going to be happening here? Like,
there is. So I'd say a lot of the trips are in Europe, but there are 3 safaris in the portfolio in Africa. And there are also the trips in Asia, in Sri Lanka and India. And I do not yet have a trip in South America, or Central America is actually in the pipeline. But yes, to answer your question, so initially when I started this business, it was actually just after, as COVID, as we were emerging from COVID, I guess still in COVID. So 2021, so 20, I think I'm now confused between, because we were talking about this before the podcast. I'm like, which part of, because I've told you this, but I think it was before the recording for the podcast. But during 2020, obviously the company that I was working for, they liquidated and I lost my job. And in mid 2021, so I had this time of like March 2020 throughout that year to kind of think, like, what am I going to do now? Like, what am I going to do? I've lost my job. I'm like stuck, like, oh, so many people in COVID. And I thought, well, I'll leverage the network I have and the knowledge I have in this industry. And there's going to be a moment when things open again, and then I'm going to be ready for it. So yeah, so 2021 summertime Europe, it relaxed a lot of travel regulations. There was a sudden flood of travel, and I managed to do 3 retreats over that summer, and they obviously were all in Europe. So and then 2022, building more trips. And so the first kind of phase, I guess, of the business was focused on Europe for the very practical reason that people weren't traveling very far. And from last year, like a much bigger portfolio of international retreats. I am South African, and so I love traveling in Africa, and I think it's so rewarding to see people who've never been to Africa or only have seen it through very negative and skewed media and that sort of thing. And I think it's so amazing to see people's surprise in traveling in Africa and seeing how it like defies their imagination, beyond imagination, and that deep, like, Africa's like the mama, you know, like it's got this deep energy, you know, and people and in the years to come. And I do also want to be able to expand enough to have different tiers of pricing, because obviously, as South Africans know, as anybody who isn't in a euro dollar pound economy knows, that the tourism industry is divided, you know, in that sense. And what is affordable and middle of the range to euro is not affordable and middle range to rand. And so it is always in my intention to kind of build out trips that are rand or sort of a developing world economy friendly, and not just euro dollar pound friendly.
Awesome. Yeah. And last question, and then I'm going to let you go, because this has been so interesting. With InRetreat, you were saying, like, it's, the word that stuck out for me was like wondrous and wonder. Like, what is the vibe of like your new business? What is the vibe of it?
So the vibe, I guess the vibe is defined by what goes on retreats, because at the end of the day, that's the authentic feeling and texture of the brand. And I would say the vibe is accessible, it's inclusive, it's super relaxed. I was literally speaking to somebody about this the other day, somebody who's been on several of my retreats, and she was saying to me, you know, what always amazes me is like the type of people that come on your retreats. Like, it's so interesting. Like, what did they say? Your vibe defines your tribe, or something like that. And so she was saying, you know, there's always a very eclectic mix of careers and industries and nationalities, and it's always people who, because I think the brand is, yoga is at the heart of what like holds the day and holds the group together, but yoga is not the end of, it's not the total end of the whole experience. You know, there is a side of the industry, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. And I also go on retreats like this where it's like 4 hours of yoga a day, and it's just about your practice, and you know, maybe there's a certificate at the end, and it's all very like yoga focused. And I think that's wonderful. And at certain times, especially yoga teachers, you go on those and you need those and they're amazing. But that's definitely not what InRetreat is doing or offering. And so yoga is a daily practice and a container, and helps us to feel good and grounded and connected as a group. But really the focus is on appreciating where you are and enjoying being in your body and enjoying life. Like, it is a totally guilt-free zone. I never tell people, oh, you can't drink that, or you can't eat that. I say to the chef, most venues, they sort of say, okay, well, it's a retreat, so please, submit all of your direction to the chef before. Do you want a meeting with the chef before? Because usually, there comes with this whole like almost food philosophy aligned with the yoga teacher and their brand and that sort of thing. And I always say to the chef, what is your like best dish? Like, what is your speciality? And give us that. And obviously people, if you have dietary requirements, and that's fine, and that's catered for. But the bottom line is, it's about appreciating. I mean, travel is a privilege, being alive is a privilege. And combining that feeling of aliveness, of wonder, of movement with travel, that's such peak energy and peak experience. And I think that's the vibe. And it's just embracing that and being part of that and allowing everybody to experience that together in their own way without judgment.
I absolutely love your enthusiasm. Like, I can tell that you're totally into it. You absolutely love it. It's so contagious is the word. I think that's what it is. So I am so excited to see how it grows, how it builds, where it goes. And we definitely need to have like another follow-up conversation, not like 10 years later, but more.
Absolutely, I'd love that.
Thank you so, so much. It's so
Thank
lovely
you.
connecting.
Thanks, Nina.